Hello and welcome. If you had to guess, who would you think holds the #1 spot as Canada's most respected profession? Make your pick, because I'm about to tell you why this admired career is in some serious trouble.
I knew it! I knew it was bad news!
Hey guys, welcome to Frontline. Sorry for any extra noise or the longer wait on these videos. I'm working in a desert for a little while, and no, I don't mean one of the fun ones.
It's hideous. I hate it. Hurts my eyes.
Now, on to the video. In their first year on the pole, paramedics have taken the lead as the most respected profession in Canada. And guess what? Their industry is a train wreck. That's why these men and women often look like they are just one patient lift away from flatlining themselves. Paramedics are those well-known frontline healthcare responders that work tirelessly to respond to your medical emergencies. They will rush to your door with just a few limited supplies, and maybe even a smile, before working to stabilize some of the most life-threatening conditions and injuries you can experience. Okay, then who took these people's souls, and really, why should you care about paramedics? Well, have you ever used the phrase, "hold my beer"? That's why you need paramedics. Today, there are nearly 40,000 identified paramedics throughout Canada, and they have worked hard to establish themselves as one of the first responders to arrive at your door in an emergency. They might help you breathe, stop that bleed, or confirm that, yes, your leg should not bend in that direction. So paramedics have always been a pretty quiet profession, with very little fanfare received or expected. There are only a few well-known mentions or appearances inside of pop culture. Now, when the pandemic hit, it brought paramedics and our closely related healthcare partners to center stage. These were some truly god-awful, miserable years. But hey, at least you didn't have to do your job wearing a sealed garbage bag.
Derelict! It is a fashion, a way of life inspired by the very homeless. Sounds cool.
Okay, but hold on. Even before the pandemic reached Canada, emergency medical responders were begging for change. And here's why. First, they are incredibly overworked, with widely acknowledged rates of staff burnout that often reach higher than 60% across Canadian services. Out of some 1,440 paramedics surveyed in Ontario, 92% said they were critically understaffed. If we look at British Columbia, the Paramedic Association there estimated that they responded to more than 1 million calls in 2021. Meanwhile, the prairies aren't doing any better, as a Manitoba report has shown us that limited staffing led to ambulances remaining idle for a cumulative 17,000 hours month after month.
Despite a small dip last year, crews are busier and more stressed than ever.
It's when these services fall critically below the levels of demand that their community asks of them, it becomes a major crisis of care. Now, those paramedics that are available and remain fit enough to work will often become exhausted during extended shifts that can reach up to 16 hours long.
We've got people exiting non-stop now. You tell me why we've got 14 empty trucks in the city of Edmonton. It's because they cannot work in this environment any longer.
And even with these levels of overtime, the wait for a responding paramedic will often reach into hour-long delays. Now, typically, paramedics would issue an area-wide red alert when there is no ambulance available to respond. Historically, these red alerts were considered rare, and they might have even prompted an investigation. Now, they're pretty much commonplace, growing in both frequency and duration. Calgary, Alberta made the news recently when they reported they had 40 stacked emergency calls, waiting from people who were in distress and calling for an ambulance. Now, if you were to ask your typical paramedic why hasn't this been addressed yet, their answer is likely to focus on low wages, poor benefits, and a general disregard for their health. Paramedics seem to be the poster child for when the office management from hell decides that throwing a pizza party will solve all of their staffing problems.
Why is it all kid stuff in a vibrator? It's so gross.
So as you can imagine, it's not uncommon for new paramedics to hear about just how little they will collect for completing this emotional and physically demanding job. And yeah, it is all that and more. If we look back in time, we can start to see some of the obstacles that brought us here. 20 years ago, a typical call volume of 8 to 10 calls in a 12-hour shift would have been considered extremely busy. Now, paramedics are regularly conducting 10 to 14 calls in the same period of time. But today, the job comes with much more to do. Beside the insane explosion in call volume, the complexity of the calls has increased dramatically. This comes from an expectation that more can and should be done for patients in the small window of time after the incident and before they reach the hospital.
No, he did.
This higher level of care is often given by advanced paramedics, and when a service is lucky enough to deploy them, they must work to maintain that coverage level, despite any staffing losses. It's when you find yourself inside of this spiral that you will almost guarantee the eventual exhaustion of even the most hardened healthcare provider. Now add on the unique stressors that this job creates, and you have the second crisis that paramedics face: their deteriorating mental health. For example, 1 in 4 paramedics will develop PTSD at some point in their careers, while their suicide rates sit at 5 times the national average. That's right up there with your local dentist.
That does not give me any relief.
If you want an idea of just how bleak the outlook on the mental health of paramedics, let's look back at British Columbia. There, 30% or nearly 1/3 of ambulance staff are now accessing some form of psychological support, and their mental health claims now represent half of all of their long-term disability.
That means 1/4 of the ambulances on a regular basis are reported as not staffed.
So at this point, I want you to imagine you were overworked with plenty of mental scars. But when you look for help back at your station, you could find they're also part of the problem. Our strong and stubborn personalities will mix with heavy doses of stress and exhaustion, and the result becomes a well-known culture of toxicity and poor morale. Unfortunately, for too many, these are just the realities that paramedics face. To remain in this industry for an extended period of time means that you will have to roll the dice on both your physical and mental health over and over.
Stop exploding, you cowards!
Look, being a paramedic has never been a profession for the faint of heart. Just as it was decades ago, it is still chosen by that special kind of person. That kind of person that dedicates their time and body to others. Now, if we're lucky, a few of these people will carry paramedicine into a lasting career. But right now, we really aren't giving them any good reasons to do that. When these paramedics end their day, when they finish their shift, they don't deserve to have their body broken, their mental health neglected, and all for a wage that doesn't hold a candle to other comparable emergency services. Paramedics don't suddenly lose their passion for helping others, but we do fall out of love with this job. We will move on to one of the more stable and supported medical fields. Just imagine planning to become an overworked nurse, thinking it will allow you to have more time off with an improved mental health. Yikes, that's how you know you're in trouble. Those ridiculous paramedics that remain into their twilight years are resilient, and truly some of the best of us. They deserve the recognition and benefits that come with being the skilled healthcare professionals that they are. So wrapping all this up, despite for years this medical field begging for the assistance it needs to solve these well-known problems, it is only now, after a global pandemic and crippling nationwide shortfalls, that we can finally see any help on the way. This industry isn't a mystery. The pay and support for this essential service need to be brought in line to match the reality of the work, and that work has always been a matter of life and death. But this time, I'm talking about the lives of some of our lesser-known healthcare heroes.
Out of the way, miscreants. Incorrect.
Yeah, incorrect.
Incorrect.
Check out our other videos like these ones here. Frontline is all about those emergency services, the military, fire, police, and everything in between. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.